Greetings, Samoa, and welcome back to Star Trek Prodigy, Season 2, Episode 4, Temporal Mechanics 101, an episode which has a surprisingly low amount of Temporal Mechanics 101. But I think most importantly, the episode where you learn the terrifying fact that Murph can see behind his own head. I picked this thumbnail, so yeah, that's episode 4 right there. That's a good image. And then I was staring at it, as I do, waiting for the stream to start, going, Murph can see behind his own head. That's just not right. But yeah, episode 4, again, I don't know if I'll have too much to say about these individual episodes, but I almost forgot. There we go. Man, I didn't even check that was the right window. I'm glad that was the right window. Let's see, you have the Infinity, which is gonna take a journey all the way back there. As we keep track of the Prodigy timeline, which, some interesting developments. I mean, again, this episode, I enjoyed it, going through it. There's, of course, a lot of unanswered mysteries, a lot of things that we'll get to in later episodes, so it's hard to judge, because on the one hand, the resolution to, like, basically everything was a Deus Ex Machina, like something came out of nowhere and saved them. But, of course, I don't think that's going to be true later on. Like, we're going to, at least some of these events I expect we'll come back to. This is actually an interesting twist, the frame right here, where Murph's talking to what appears to be someone from the future. Specifically, it appears to be the one of the players in the Temporal Cold War. The people who were the benefactors for the Suliban, who I don't think we ever learned, like, anything about, other than they're before the 31st century. But I'm not sure if this is supposed to say this is that same group of people who communicated this way and looked a live-action version of what we're seeing here. I mean, we definitely have T-cards-esque thing going on, I feel. We have Temporal Cold... like the sort of things you would see Daniels use or the Time Agents use in Enterprise and Voyager. But this could also just be, like, not them, just someone using the same technology, and we're saying this is what it looks like when you communicate through time. Because I was thinking that, I think I've said before, the main cast would be, like, setting in motion the events that we're seeing. Like, the main cast would be responsible for the orb at the beginning of the wormhole, for repairing the ship, for sending themselves messages, which still might be the case. But this doesn't really seem like the main cast. I mean, certainly it's not the right body size or proportions for, like, anybody in the main cast except maybe the Vulcan. The voice is different, of course, but there'd be some sort of voice disguise if it was the main cast, because otherwise we'd be like, hey, I know that voice. But yeah, otherwise, I don't know, it's also interesting because we've removed Gwen from Solum, where obviously we'll get more there. We've also removed Gwen from her father, and so far this season, the things I was enjoying the most, it was most invested in, were Gwen's story on Solum with her father. And so now Gwen's story isn't on Solum and her father's out of the picture. You know, they might come back, of course. But yeah, I was hoping to get more. I mean, maybe the Prodigy crew, like, we'll resolve whatever's going on with Chakotay, and then we'll come and fix Solum. That sounds like it might be a way you could do things. I'm sorry, I've literally just realized something that... I've realized something that might not work, right? So, this whole timeline rests on the fact that in 2437, Chakotay is going to send the protostar back in time. That's this red one right here. We're going to send the protostar back in time. And the reason he has to send the protostar back in time is because over here, he goes through a temple anomaly onto a Solum that has been devastated by first contact in, like, this time right here. And so they're hostile and arrest him. But if Solum never has a civil war, then Chakotay would presumably go through the wormhole to a Solum that is entirely peaceful. He would never have to send the Protostar back in time. And then the season couldn't happen. That's something I hope we get a resolution for. I mean, there were a few references in this episode to quantum timelines, so, you know, here I think we are treating this as essentially a split, that Chakotay's stuck over in this timeline, but we're going to fix it and go down this timeline where Solum isn't in war. Yes, I know. I hope you've been joining me for the previous streams and you can parse this. But I've said before, I'd really want to avoid that, because if we do this with the timeline, well, then you still, like, you don't save Solum from civil war. Everybody still dies. Solum's still super xenophobic, and this future continues forever. You've just split off a new one where that doesn't happen. Which I guess might be some kind of victory. But, you know, I'd rather just avoid that. There are ways to get around it. I mean, supposedly Gwen was going to survive averting the Civil War. So... Prodigy, Netflix, with their little overlay that I always forget about. Yeah, I guess we'll just have to reserve most judgment for Prodigy's timeline, timey-wimey stuff until the end of the season. But yeah, I guess we'll just start with the scene by scene. As I said, there's generally not a whole lot to discuss for the individual Prodigy episodes so far. Well, actually, generally, there's not a whole lot to discuss, and then we get to the little bit, and then suddenly there's a decent amount to discuss. But yeah, I will say there were some things, especially with a plot that's clearly going to be so dependent on a well-thought-out time travel logic. Netflix! Some explanations that did feel kind of hand-wavy, like Voyager A exists because maybe the Infinity's temporal shielding is protecting them somehow, which feels weak, especially when you could have said anything like about the wormhole. Maybe our proximity to the wormhole is protecting us because it's emitting chronotons. I don't know, we used chronotons a lot this episode. Like, if temporal shielding... I think I get the logic that the Infinity comes from Voyager. So if the Infinity exists, then Voyager has to exist. But if you follow that logic, like, the relativity from Voyager, the USS Relativity, has temporal shieldings, and the relativity existing is dependent on the Federation existing. So wouldn't the Federation exist? You know, you could get into arguments like that. It's like, it's a fairly minor detail that, again, was always just going to be hand-waved through technobabble. I guess I was a little unsatisfied, though. Like, it's a little nervous when you have to be so tight in how, you know, in how this whole thing is working out, that to have an explanation like that. But yeah, otherwise, again, it was just an enjoyable ride, really. I genuinely might not have anything. As I said, we'll see. If we have a lot of episodes like this, I might bunch them together. I might just review Prodigy all at the end. Some shows don't really review too well on, like, an individual basis. But I am glad that we are getting the Voyager A crew I've remembered as pretty important stays. Like, as they're not just going to be in here for like 2 or 3 episodes. We're seeing the Doctor, we're seeing Janeway, and again, there is something nice about seeing the main 24th century crew just like going on. I think that's where most fans' kind of hearts are. That's where like now feels like, just after Endgame, around Lower Decks and Voyager, or Lower Decks and Prodigy rather. Even Picard is a little bit like future-y, if that makes sense. I wanted to check you though. What was your name? Because if this is a reference, I totally did not understand it. Star Trek, Aaron MacDonald, Memory Alpha. It's sure. I imagine it is a reference. Well, there's a live action photo of her. Dr. McDonald. Yeah. In jokes at what? No, Dr. Aaron McDonald is an astrophysicist, aerospace engineer, and science fiction consultant. She has served as the science advisor for Star Trek since 2019. Okay. So it's a real life person who plays Dr. McDonald. That is funny. All right, so no, it is a reference, but not one that you would get unless you know the meta stuff. The reason I was confused is this was the live action photo that came up, and I'm like, I do not recognize this from any Star Trek. I'm actually curious, what is that photo of? Because it genuinely looks like they're presenting Temporal Mechanics 101. Technically, she's a character from First Contact that was mentioned. Again. Where's the episode gone? But yeah, I found, especially for an episode literally titled Temporal Mechanics 101, as I alluded to, it felt like there really wasn't a lot of temporal mechanics. I mean, I like the sequence of doing it is like, especially for a kids show that is, you know, doing a fairly, probably the most complicated timeline thing in the franchise, to sit down and be like, right, here's the rules of time travel. Here's what we're going by. But it basically said, like, time travel is existing. This was the important part, really. I feel like the domino sequence was the only thing that mattered, is you make sure the big events happen. But everything else was, like, literally fast-forwarded through. It's like, hey, time travel's complicated. You shouldn't build a time machine, but if you have to, here's how. I guess building a time machine is just public knowledge at this point. But mostly, I did find it kind of weird how Temporal Mechanics 101 evidently... Like, did anyone else find it weirdly condescending for what is essentially a college-level course for the military? Like, this is Starfleet Academy Temporal Mechanics 101, and it feels like they're explaining it to kindergarteners in a weird sense. That didn't quite land on me. It's like, yeah, make sure kids don't go changing time. It's like, what do you mean, kids? Like, if I went to college and one of my freshman courses was like, all right, kids, time to get learning, I'd be like, what? No, that's not how this works. That's not how it works, guys. But yeah, I was just surprised, really, how vague so far they're keeping kind of the rules of time travel. And again, with things like Gwen is here 52 years in the future because reasons. Because they're not... Because, you know, they shouldn't exist because the timeline's been changed. So that means they also exist 52 years in the future, somewhere that they have never been and isn't really tied to their existence, I would think. Have they... Are we saying that Gwen is always at the bottom of this cave for, like, every moment throughout history? Well, clearly not, because they used to use this cave. So is it just, like, from here forever into the future, where it seems like we're not using this cave? I don't think so, because I got the impression that they were using this cave for, like, the 100 people they sent back in time. I don't know, it wasn't bad. I wouldn't really call it anything that happened like plot holes. I would just say that there's a lot of stuff that was kind of convenient. Like, again, the ship's just repaired. well, that's convenient. And sure, it's repaired because somebody from the future fixed it. Um, we could still get something satisfying where we see like Del and crew resolve all of these plot lines that have been laid out. I was almost debating in this episode, should I start keeping a list of everything that needs to be fixed and like someone needs to do by the end of the series? But I think we're good. I think my paint document will be enough. Yeah. So again, this was one where I'm a little nervous to how satisfying all the timey-wimey stuff is gonna resolve itself. But it was an enjoyable enough ride. And honestly, that's probably all I have to say about this episode in particular. As I said, real short, no... Netflix, give me my time. Watch credits? Okay, there we go. I'm like, I need my time bar, Netflix. Oh yeah, shoot, and I almost forgot. Yeah, it'd be interesting if Prodigy does end up doing Cold War stuff. Come on, where's that frame? I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I mean, I'm actually... I know a lot of people really don't like the Cold War arc in Enterprise, and my only complaint with the Temporal Cold War is that it calls into question whether or not everything after Enterprise actually happened, or if it'd been overridden, which is a complaint that's resolved for all its problems by These Are the Voyages. By the finale of Enterprise, where we see, no, actually, all of this stuff happened before, and here's a very specific TNG Enterprise episode to prove it. And I think I asked my uncle, who is also a Star Trek fan, going in, like, hey, is that resolved? And he goes, yes. So that really helped. Yeah, and yeah, otherwise, I mean, God, the Temporal Cold War makes no sense. Like, they end the Temporal Cold War by saying it never happened, and absolutely, the original timeline that, like, Daniels is from is not the prime timeline. There's no way in hell. When we watch Enterprise, we'll go through the comical list of ways in which the prime timeline is not the one where the Temporal Cold War originated. But, God, that's a whole nother issue. So yeah, I mean, these guys, they are a total unknown in Star Trek, other than they're part of the Cold War, and they supported the Suliban. So I might be interested to see some actual development. It is kind of funny that Murph is the one who they seem to be working with. But yeah, still just a lot of questions that are going to be answered later. As I do me my drink. Pretty quick stream again, though, 20 minutes. I might honestly only spend 20 minutes. To be fair, though, 20 minutes is basically the entire length of the episode spent talking about the episode. But yeah, I will admit, if we are doing a few streams like this, I might just batch do, or I honestly will probably just watch as much Prodigy until I get to a point where I feel, yeah, now's a good point to talk about them. But for now, I think I will still continue with this one episode review thing. And I actually am going to do another one because I'm enjoying this. I want to watch Prodigy again. So if you weren't here last time, what I'm going to do is create the review stream for episode 5. I've got to go watch episode 5 in probably about 40 minutes from now. Probably 5, literally 40 minutes from now. We will be back to review that one. So I'd like to say thank you all very much for watching.